Hey guys, we're going to be looking at the range on a graph on Desmos, and it is a piecewise graph. There's going to be 3 parts to this. Now, the really important part to this that's different from other sections that we've done is that there is a defined gap in the range, and we're going to learn how to write that today. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We are going to go ahead and say right away that we are going to look from the least to the greatest on the Y. Okay, so when we do the range, that's how I always start these. I say, okay, the range, we're going to start from the least to the greatest. And we are going to be looking at the Y values. That's going to be really important for you to pay attention to. Now, as I do this, I prefer to start with left to right or lowest to highest, however you like to do it, with the individual pieces of graph. So over here on the left, what you're going to notice is that we have a graph that is red. And if we keep going out and out and out, you'll notice real easily that both the red and the green are going all the way down, and the green one is increasing and increasing and increasing. So you may be able to see right now that we've got a negative infinity piece, and then we have a positive infinity piece going with this. Now, as I work on the range, I'm going to go to the y-axis. That's how I like to do this. I say, check it out. Okay, this y, there's a y there. There's a y value right there. There's a y value right there. Okay, y value, y value, y value, y value. And then all of a sudden we get to here and it stops. So when we write this range, we just simply say, okay, we started at negative infinity and then we're going to another number. And we got to figure out what that number is. So I'm going to go ahead and trace this graph up, and I'm going to say, okay, well, let's look at here it is. So I trace it all the way up. I trace it all the way up to the y value of -2, and that is a defined value. So I'm going to say, oh, that is a defined value. So I'm going to say, okay, well, I can go to -2, and I'm going to put a bracket. Now, remember, one of the ways we can determine that is if there's an equal sign in the inequality. And you can see it right there. There is an equal sign in the inequality. And it also means that it is a defined answer. Okay, or included, some people would say. Now, remember, with parentheses, that is unincluded. Not included, not defined. Okay. Now, as we look at this graph, one thing that you should notice is that there's this little gap in the data, and it is right here. There is a gap right there. Okay. And as you're looking at that gap, that means that we have a non-complete range. So not all the range values are going to show up, or all the y values are going to show up. So there's a gap in the data, meaning there's no graph on the left or the right side of the y-axis there. So how I'm going to show that is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to write the statement or. A gap is going to be or. And then from there, I'm going to pick it up. Okay, now the first graph that gets picked up is this blue one. So let's go ahead and trace the blue one all the way down to the lowest level. And when I do that, it's going to bring me to this value that is undefined. Remember, we're looking at the y values because this is the range. It is undefined at a y value of 0. So it is undefined at a y value of 0. So how do I do that? I put a parenthesis 0. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace it up. Well, guess what? It keeps going and going and going. And there's y values and y values and y values. But notice what it does. It overlaps the y-axis, kind of like with the green graph. They're lining up. They have parts of the range. There's no gap anymore because once we hit the top of the blue one, which is 5, the green takes over and there is no gap in the range up here. It just keeps going and going and going. So the range goes all the way up to infinity. All right, so that's how we show a gap in the data. We put in a range, we put that or statement in there. We got to find the lowest, the highest, and then we put that or statement and we start the range back over. There are two separate pieces to writing that range.